Yeah, it's a feel good, but where's the accountability on it? Like to say if it's really going to work or not?
Yeah, do they have any responsibility to now cooperate with the police to help solve these investigations?
There's been people that have been in prison that turn out to be great people and pillars of society, but you just don't throw them in a group and say, hey, good luck with that.
Welcome to Three Cops Talk. On this podcast, 3 active duty police officers discuss behind-the-scenes stories and real-life accounts of what it's like to be a cop. Every episode, you'll get an inside look at the challenges and dangers they face on a daily basis, as well as the triumphs and inspirational moments that make it all worth it. If you want to understand more about the men and women who put their lives on the line for us every day, then this is the show for you. And now your hosts, Chris, Scott, and Sean.
In an attempt to quell violent crime in some of its most dangerous neighborhoods, the city of Chicago has sought the help of some street-credible local residents, now known as Peacekeepers. After the initial deployment provided arguably questionable results, we discuss how, other than its personnel, the program's inception and operational protocols seem to be largely unknown to the majority of street-level cops. If you have any ideas or topics for the show, please reach out to us at 3copstalk@gmail.com. That's the number 3copstalk@gmail.com. If you'd like to reach us through social media, our details are in the show notes.
Views and opinions expressed in this episode belong solely to the hosts and do not represent the views of any professional organization. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy the show.
You guys can't see this because it's obviously a podcast, but my camera doesn't work. It's really weird.
Dude, it's the camera on the computer. How does that happen?
I don't know.
You should just FaceTime us during that.
Yeah.
It's not the
I'm going to
same just
FaceTime
looking
it
at the
separately.
dark screen.
It has nothing to do with the camera. What I've done is I've tried to change my look because, we're getting a little more popular here. So I'm getting a perm. It takes a little while. I don't want anybody to
I'm getting highlights.
The
Right,
great
unveiling.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And the screen's just going to come down like this, like an old download. Like, oh my God.
I'm putting Grecian formula on my sideburns, which totally are indicative of my age.
But you did the remember someone that used to work with us that they were kind of gray, and then they just did the jet black hair dye, not the blend in, they should the blend in, you took.
Oh, who sent a picture of Elvis?
Right. He's sweating on a call, and there's black shit running down his face.
We got a foot pursuit, and I was like, I didn't know you were a robot. Is that crude oil leaking from your scalp? What is that?
The only thing missing was the angry Uncle Leo eyebrows, with the black marker. Whoa, hey, easy.
Leo, I don't care for your demeanor.
As the elder statesman of Three Cops Talk, I always am leery of trying new things, different things that are not vetted and checked out.
Like going to decaf?
I love my cycle because it loves me.
Today's episode is kind of, hey, people are trying to do new things and trying to address issues as they see fit, but they don't properly vet it, and they don't look to previous places where these things can work well for you, or some of the pitfalls that people have experienced. Chris and Scott had brought up some topics related to this notion of the Peacekeepers in the city of Chicago. And I was like, wow, that's destined to struggle for some of the reasons, because one, it's Chicago, and two, there are some other things that are, we've seen past precedents for that. So Scooter, what are you seeing or hearing?
Well, so the for those of you that don't know, Chicago tried to implement or has implemented this Peacekeeper group, which is essentially volunteers. Essentially what someone's bright idea was, well, we're short on police, so we're going to start this group of peacekeepers, and they're going to walk around certain neighborhoods wearing yellow vests, and they're kind of there I guess, supposed to be members of the community and to help diffuse some of these things we keep hearing about. Oh, we need more, you need to just diffuse some of these situations, and social workers, and, kind of handle it from that aspect. And I'm not saying I don't disagree that there's certain things that can be diffused, but what happened in Chicago, shockingly, is that an individual who was hired to be one of these peacekeepers, by the way, at the expense of, I think I saw the number of $700,000 they had earmarked for this program. I might be wrong on that, but one of these individuals that was Peacekeeper, he got involved with some other folks, and according to the story that I'm reading, was part of a mob of about 10 people who pulled a driver out of a car and beat and robbed him in the city. And as this was unfolding and he was running away, he was trying to pull off his Peacekeeper vest to avoid capture. And as you dig a little further into it and see that this individual actually just got out of prison about a month ago after serving a 10-year prison term for shooting a rival gang member.
Right.
So that's where we're at.
Well, he did his 10. That's your qualifications. You got your 10? Okay.
Right. What's your resume?
Right. So here's the thing. So Pritzker put this together, sent it to Chicago, and the concept itself is good. And here's what I'm going to tell you.
So wait, just real quick clarification, Chris. You said this came from the governor's office? J.B. Pritzker's office came up with this idea?
Yeah. Pritzker put this together with Brandon Johnson and stuff like that. So the concept itself, I think, is a good idea because years ago, when you had the police on the street, a lot of ways they kept peace is they went to they knew their sector, they went to the gang leaders and stuff like that, and they made this unwritten agreement, like, hey, listen, kind of like with the mob, you keep the stuff in your backyard, all right? Keep the stuff in your backyard, amongst yourself, because if civilians get involved, now you're bringing me in, and then I'm going to disrupt your trade, whatever it is, girls or dope or whatever. So we have to have this mutual agreement. And, it kind of worked on a handshake for the most part. On top of the fact that at the time you were allowed to be the police and you were allowed to make arrests and keep the peace. So part of me says it's kind of a good idea because you're taking somebody local and kind of giving you the bridge in to make this contact, to try and maybe work like what our podcast is about, to get people talking, to try and reach some mutual agreement. But the flip side is everybody's yelling about the police, like, what kind of training do you have? Why aren't you de-escalating stuff and all this other stuff? And then when a policeman gets arrested or a policeman does something, it's the news for 5 days. Well, this happens is something that they tried. Pritzker and Johnson fall on their face, and this guy gets arrested with there's no questions, no media. There's one article on it. Like, it just, again.
Right. Why is this not a bigger deal?
Why is this not a big? Because if it was a cop, it would be mass hysteria. But why are we not taking that? And again, it's something. Do I think it will work? I don't know. But at least it's something we're giving a shot to. But I really don't think you want to give somebody without vetting them. Like,
right.
There's been people that have been in prison that turn out to be great people and pillars of society. But you just don't throw them in a group and say, hey, good luck with that, without any guidance.
Right.
And
you're right.
Training.
The program is a good idea, on its face, but you got to have the right people in place, making sure that the right people are being selected to do this. And it shouldn't just be, like you said, just thrown into the community. Like, take some time, or maybe introduce it in conjunction with the police. Like, I don't even know how this was even sold to the community.
I think it was sold as a political move. Like, oh, police, we don't have enough police, so we're going to put these peacekeepers in there to see maybe we have more people protecting them, and then you don't have their false narrative of, police coming in and abusing you or whatever. I think it was something that was thought up overnight and say, hey, let's do this because it's a political campaign type of thing, and not well thought through. And then you got people, and I think there was some more people that got arrested actually. Like there was one or two peacekeepers. And then on top of that, then last weekend you have 42 shot. Like, and again, it's like everything else. When we talk about training, and one of the things I've always got frustrated about when training is you go out there and you would train. Well, what is your goal? Like, you train to task, not train for time. So if your goal is to get 50 repetitions of whatever, or bring down your holster to response time, or like whatever it is, like, what are you training for? What do you want to do? You just don't take this and say, hey, okay, so here's your training. You don't yell at people and you try and give them hugs. And I'm making light of it. But whatever the training is, you've got to make sure that they want us as policemen to be ready for everything. You're putting people, boots on the ground, that are right there trying to talk to these people ahead of time. What is your goal? What's your pattern? What's your form? And have you ever talked to anybody about have you ever de-escalated anybody? Like this guy, how did he de-escalate the last one? He shot a rival gang member and did 10 years in prison. I mean, like, what are you trying to do? Is I'm trying to look at it like, hey, good idea, but what are you trying to do?
And why was there I didn't see from the few articles that I've read on this, none of them talked about what were the qualifications to do this, or,
right.
Or was this individual one person who, fell through the cracks kind of thing? You know what I mean? There's like no talk of that at all. They talk about his criminal history.
Right.
And again, like you said, just because you have a criminal history doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad person. We've proven that over and over again with people that we talk to on this show. But again, violent history, just out of prison. What training could you possibly have been getting to put you into this situation? I don't get it. And there's no more story about it. Like, we're not even hearing about it anymore.
It's gone.
It's pretty obvious why the cops were involved in Illinois. Like, look, I'm not pulling any punches on this, and I don't think any of us should be. People that listen to this show, there's an adversarial relationship between politicians that run the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago and the police. You hear that we're often considered the enemy. Like, law schools up there are referring to, us. Why you can't get good prosecutors right now, or any prosecutors, is because in law schools, I'm told by people that have attended law school that they're referring to the police as the enemy. Why would you work with the enemy? Well, you got to go to Afghanistan and deal with people that are like in beds, like that helped, the forces on the ground deal with people a little bit better than what we did. Now, we're talking about a war-torn nation that's run by warlords and everything else. And you could beg to make the argument, well, how is that any different than what's happening in some of these cities? Well, they pay these guys like $100, what I read. They give them a green vest, which is on. I don't know about you guys, but on the streets, the green vest, the neon green vest, is instant credibility. right. Instant credibility. If you've ever dealt with anybody in a green vest, they're usually pretty squared away, and their customer service skills are, like, bar none, probably the best. Some of the things that I found a little alarming about it was how Scott, you brought up the selection process. What I was reading was like, selection process was you have to have the credibility from the streets, like, which means on the streets that you've been in a gang, you've killed somebody, you grew up in violence and things like that. We have to go through a tremendous vetting process psychologically, polygraphs, all of these things, background checks, who our friends are. Well, this is the inversion of that. It's almost like the bizarro world of people that you're asking to come in and help you out. Look, if we as cops were drawn to this work because of the trauma that young black men experience, Hispanic men experience in the inner cities, like, violence resolution to those guys is violence. It's violence. They're steeped in that. So, like, I'm a peacemaker. I have credibility. I know what this can do to you. I get it. So this idea, I think, is flawed in the premise that you're not involving the people that have to come in and actually have the legal authority of the state. Like, how do you, like, are they wearing body cameras? Are they why are they not wearing body cameras? Right. They're coming in to resolve these issues. If we're going to spend $700,000, that is literally a drop in the bucket. I mean, obviously the police side of the house was like, we would rather have 2 cops for that cost than 10 peacekeepers that are really not necessarily vetted properly. Like, how do you get past some of the things these young men witnessed and go, all right, now all of a sudden you're blessed. So you went to the prison system. You were reformed by the prison system. That can happen. We've had people on the show that did, like Garland Mays. It'd be interesting to get him on here and talk to him about what his thoughts are on this. Like, but you're not going to solve this problem with a 10-second Band-Aid fix on there to appeal to a bunch of people that are like, what are you doing about this violence in the city? From what I understand, they're looking to cut the police budget by 9% annually over the next 4 years. A 36% cut in the cost if policing in Chicago is not really the answer right now.
Right.
And a $700,000 Band-Aid with people that we don't really know. Again, hats off to the guys that are out there really trying to make a difference.
Sure.
No BS. This is a grand idea in the great sense. But these guys, honestly, like, we're going to take social workers and throw vests on them and say, go out there and deal with the mentally ill. These guys should be riding with cops because they're going to see who is a necessary component of this when people don't listen to reason, which is pretty common in those circumstances.
And I'll be honest with you. I mean, so backing up a little bit. So this all came from a $250 million public safety act. I think it's called Reimage or Reimagine or something like that. It's basically what our state did off of the whole George Floyd thing. They're trying to do different things and stuff. So you're putting $250 million into something that you don't know. then you're cutting the police budget by 36% over the next 4 years. And again, it's everybody, to me, everybody's taking their ball and going home. Like, look if you want to do this Peacekeeper thing, get the police involved. Let the police, because, hey, I'm the first one to say, if you put one of these Peacekeepers on my car, I may learn something. I may learn some new street jargon. I may learn what really culturally may, de-escalate something or whatever. But you just can't send them out there with, here's we're going to give you $250 million. Good luck with that. Yeah. And where's the $250 million coming from? The Chicago Police Department.
With no set there's no
policies, no procedures, no rule.
Oh, here you go. It sounds good. It's a feel good thing. It is. Right. It's a feel good thing. Like, oh, this is great, getting people back into the community. Yeah, it's a feel good, but
execution.
Where's the accountability on it? Like, to say if it's really going to work or not.
And is there anything in the training of these Peacekeepers, whatever the hours are, their prerequisites are, is there anything in the Peacekeepers that say if these are people from the street and have credibility? And I read an article where one guy was a Peacekeeper, was interviewed and said, I got to stop the shooting because these are my people and I understand what's going on. Okay, so if you know these people and they're shooting people, and when somebody inevitably gets shot, because they had 59 people shot over Memorial Day weekend with the deployment of these Peacekeepers, 11 people died over that same period.
Yep.
One 7-year-old girl, by the way.
Yeah. Do they have any responsibility to now cooperate with the police to help solve these investigations, which is what, again, snitches get stitches? Is that being thrown out by the Peacekeepers? Like, we can't keep living like that. Like, hey, if you're a Peacekeeper or you know a Peacekeeper that's on this and you want to come talk to us on the show, please let us know. We're going to ask you questions just like cops have been asked questions for the last 10 years about what we're doing and not doing and everything else. So, like, we have questions of this as well, because when I show up on a situation and there's a guy in a green vest, you know how many people can just get green vests?
Right.
Now I show up as a cop and I'm like, is this guy a Peacekeeper? This is going to be put out there. And I'd be really interested to see, did the police department have any participation in this on any level whatsoever to say, hey, these folks need to understand protocols as to when the police show up. We were called, somebody called, and somebody's going to.
And at what point, like, where do they stop and then the police have to take over? You know what I mean? What are their directives of, okay, you've got situation, whatever, this is happening between two people. It's not getting resolved, or you feel it's escalating, or it's outside of what you can handle. Like, where's the protocol to say, hey, XYZ, this is when you call an officer and now they got to come and deal with this. I mean, and then, like, are there things that are going unreported? You know what I mean? Do you have, maybe they did help break up, an argument, a fight or something between two people, and it's happened multiple times. Is it documented? Do we know? And then, and then you have like a domestic battery, or God forbid somebody, really hurts or kills somebody. And then you're going back and going, wait a second. We had how many instances with these two individuals ahead of time where we could have put some legal implications, in place to keep them apart, or maybe protected someone's life here? What you don't even, do you know? Do you not know? I don't get it.
And I agree. I mean, I think, how do you measure that? Like, and that's the thing. We have policies, we have procedures, we have to report, we have to pull numbers. How are you measuring this, that this works? Oh, only 47 shot instead of 52. Like, what are you, like, how are you going to measure that? And how, again, the police aren't going away. Everybody could shout, defund them or whatever. The police aren't going away, because if the police aren't here, then you're going to have the National Guard come in. You have to have some sort of peacekeeper and some peacekeeper mission. And it's not people going around in yellow vests. We have violent, bad people out there. And the majority of the people want the police, a good majority. It's the squeaky wheels out there that are doing, want these major cuts. But again, why are we not taking these good ideas and saying, hey, the police has been doing this for hundreds of years. Why don't we get the police in the same room with everybody else? And maybe even some of that tension between the Peacekeepers that may not like the police and the police that have problems with these people in the past, these people, that it starts to bridge the gap. You just don't throw people out there with no policy, because like Sean said, if I show up and you got some guy in a green vest beating some guy, guess what? That guy in the green vest is going to get tackled and probably handcuffed.
Yeah.
I just don't understand. Again, I would love for a peacekeeper or whoever was involved in this plan to come on the
or
show.
somebody with the program, like somebody who's part of the
Right.
program, someone
Correct.
that
And let's figure
the
out
oversight of this.
Some oversight, something, and to get some of these questions answered, because you want to talk to the police about, you did this, you did that. Like this guy who robbed this guy and beat, Montez, I think it was.
Yeah.
He robbed this guy and beat him with his own cell phone. Okay. Why is that not national news like the police? Or what was your goal? What are you trying to do? Because maybe, just maybe, I know we don't have a huge audience, just maybe we get one of these peacekeepers on here, the 4 or 5 of us sit down and we start the dialogue of, hey, this is what our goal was. And then you start calling people out. Hey, Brandon Johnson, come on the show and let's talk about this. If this is what your goal is, that's not really worked out. What's your plan?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is the plan? Peacekeeper, I'm all for it. I'm all for wanting to maybe go visit Chicago someday again without getting killed downtown. I'm all for it. But what's the plan? What's your goal? And by defunding the police and reverting it to these people, I don't think it's the answer without proper training and proper documentation. And how are you going to weigh its success or not?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, there's definitely some past, information available on it saying that when these folks are present, there are declines in neighborhoods of shootings and things like that. And I mean, I can't help but to think that is because people are out there with eyes on it, and it's good. I mean, there is some good that comes from this, but the bottom line is that this is not going to be an answer without the police being involved. And that's our take on this whole thing, is just like, we have to have somebody in there that acts in a manner of which, like, hey, we're the government. We shouldn't be taking sides, things like that. Now, I know people are constantly being pumped in those neighborhoods about how awful the police are. I think we're seeing a generation with the advent of social media, and you can find what you want to believe, and the things you want to see, where young people are being led to believe that we are like literally their enemies in these situations. And the same things that happen to cops can happen to members of these groups. That's my biggest concern, is that we're not working in union with this, and we're being further squeezed out. And then we become like an occupying army when we do show up. That's not going to help the situation either. Like, I don't believe you because you're in a blue shirt. We talked about Ariana, the officer from Chicago that was just murdered. You couldn't ask anybody that's more involved and more embedded in a culture, a system, a society that did what she needed to do to improve herself, to get ahead, to serve the community that she was murdered in cold blood about that. That story's dead. Nobody's talking about it. It's dead. Nobody's talking about it anymore. And that was the St. Valentine's Day Massacre is something we still talk about with the gangsters from Chicago and everything else about how these people were rounded up, killed, murdered, and things like that. It's a famous thing. There's no difference in what happened to her. And we're not talking about this. So these are the things that we all need to look. I'm looking forward to this possibly working, being an opportunity, but I do not strongly believe that cutting the cops out of this, and that's everything I'm reading, there's nothing to mention other than the cops are like, we're being portrayed as, hey, we don't like people moving in on our turf and we would much rather handle this or whatever. But I'm going to tell you, just from this standpoint, moving through the process, you can knock the training in Chicago and Illinois all you want, but the bottom line is a much more proven process with better results that have come from this than like, hey, let's just throw yellow vests on people and this quick fix to this thing because we just got, $250 million given to us for this reasons, and let's tout that because I want to show that I'm doing something. There's got to be more to this than meets the eye.
Right. And again, going back to, what you said about, it shows some positive because you have people in the neighborhood. Okay. It shows some positive too, because when you have, when you're up to your numbers in the police and you have the right amount of police driving through the neighborhood, it would be the same thing. So now you have somebody in the neighborhood that is being seen, which is probably a reduction in crime. Okay, but what do? Do you put them 24 hours? Do you put them out there for 24 hours? Do you give them direct access to the police? Do you give them like, hey, I'm talking to so-and-so. What are your parameters to report? Like, you have to report this or you have to report that, or you have, again, I think it could be workable, could be doable. And eventually, though, what happens is the crime moves down the street. Well, what's going to happen at some point, the street's going to end. And the police are going to have to come in and take people to jail, because by the time they get the end of the road, they've had numerous opportunities to change their mind, change the route they were taking, become a pillar of society. but they chose to go to the end of the road on the dark side, then the police have to step in. People have to go to prison because you have to make people realize that all these options that were given, you didn't choose it. Here, now we'll choose for you.
Yeah. And it can be a supplement to the police, to Sean's point. It can be a supplement to the police, but it's not going to replace the police. It's not going to happen.
It can't.
And just like with police, I mean, you're going to see people that are nefarious actors. And that guy killed my brother. Now I'm a peacekeeper. I see that guy in the street. That guy's a threat to me, whatever.
Right.
Those things are not automatically going to go away. The other problem is I'm going to do this to become a peacekeeper to keep the cops off my ass in my operation.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, have we not seen cops do that?
Yeah.
I really hope it works, but I think wow, rank and file cops have no clue this is going on. Wouldn't you guys say? I mean, you're up there, Scott.
Oh, yeah.
Is this something who is this guy with the yellow vest showing up thinking he's in charge? Who are you? You're just getting people de-escalation is something they say we're terrible at. And we all come from, as we're told, white privilege, where we didn't have to deal with the trauma that these kids, that is a long lasting effect on how a person deals with something. And I don't think the system, as we've proven through mental health and treatment, is equipped enough to deal with it. When Melissa Wooliver was on the show and dealt with juveniles that felt prison was a better option for them than actually, going back to where they were from, realize a lot of these young men come from that environment where violence, drugs, narcotics, abuse, all of these things are regular. And throwing a yellow vest on a guy isn't going to undo 2 decades worth of that. Watching their friends die in the street. Those are things that are no doubt impactful to you and maybe can inspire you to stop. But most of us are just humans and flawed and failed. And we won't forget people that killed our friends. We won't forget these things. And hopefully most of these guys can put this stuff to good use. But I don't understand why we don't know more about this initiative in a state as densely populated that has so many cops in Illinois. How are we not all being educated on this? De-escalation was the big buzzword, right? We're never going to be good enough at that for our society. I don't think we're ever going to reach the top of that mountain. We can work towards it. But all of a sudden now, because I come from the streets, I'm now a more credible de-escalator of these situations. Tell me why I'm not being involved in that if that's true as a cop.
Right.
And I think
we should teach our de-escalation classes or whatever,
Right. And I think we should probably see how this goes, over the summertime and take a look at it at the end of the summer. And just like anybody would that was investing this kind of money in this should be looking it over again. Let's say, okay, the end of summer, what did things look like this summer in Chicago? And did it change anything? Do you have actual instances of where, oh my gosh, this was the thing that made this happen, or we had X number of incidents that didn't turn violent because of this? I would like to see the statistics.
Yeah, the numbers came down. And here's the other thing. One of the last things that I had to say about this is something that would have been a social media, TV, radio, magazine, newspapers frenzy. This is what we're starting January 1 to roll out for Memorial Day. And this is what's going to happen. This is what our expectations are. This is this. Oh, here we are a week earlier. Hey, a week from now, we're gonna deploy 30 people. Good luck with that. It could have been a social media or media grandstand for them.
Right.
Yeah. But they don't.
To go back to other shows to kind of on this point, my final thing is all right, let's check to see what's going on. But just like we're not credible reporting our own numbers to the media and people that are adversarial towards the police, we can't just blindly accept numbers of here's what they prevented, whatever. They tell us, how do you measure,
exactly
crime prevention? What does it really do? How do you measure that? We just can't accept prima facie from the organizations that have a vested interest in continuing to receive this money from these grants and these allotments that's saying, oh yeah, look at this. This is credible. This is completely credible. The media needs to vet that stuff just as much as they vet us and show, 100%. Bob, go back to the shows that we have with Bob Scales. He talks about the people that have, interests in making cops look bad, use bad data to measure this. I hope those same standards will be applied to the peacekeepers to say whether this works or not. And if it's true and it's credible and they come to the police and the police go, yeah, based upon what we said, and we face no political pressure from the mayor's office to report this, it did work or it didn't work. And here's what we think we need to do to bridge this gap. It can't just be all flowers and whatever. It has to be the realities of what it is, because this is the people of Illinois' money. And the state of Illinois is broke.
Right.
And let's make sure we're doing this the right way and getting some folks on. And like I said, I think we're more than welcome to listen to anybody that can provide us another side of this.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Right.
pretty
I would
credible.
love to have him here. Yeah. I would love to have him because there's so many questions, and I think it'd be a 2 or 3 part show because, again, like somebody needs a conversation to start this and like, okay, great idea, but how are we going to make this work from both the police and from the Peacekeeper side? How are we going to get buy-in from both, and how we're going to work together? And it's something that, again, I think it has potential somewhat on its prima facie, but I don't know what the details are, and I would really like somebody to come on the show and kind of school us in on that.
I'm really hoping they can help me fix my camera on my MacBook Pro.
Can we have a Peacekeeper that's the
Sean
president?
didn't want to have his camera on because he's actually wearing a yellow vest while we're talking.
That's right now. I'm going to go out in the parking lot and start telling people. I'm going to interject on like things that like people that get all.
But you don't get involved in like, you just get involved in random things. Like you walk through your neighborhood and tell people their grass is too long and stuff like that. It's like, wait, no, this isn't really what the program was about.
But I'm not only just
he has one of those old time rulers. Remember the ones you unfold that get to be like 6 feet long, and then he's out there trying to fold it back up like Grandpa.
But I'm completely green, and I'm only using a push mower, like one of those push. Like it's like this should take you the next 7 hours to make sure you're contributing to a clean environment.
Everybody's gonna carry it in their basement.
And all the time I'm giving them historical anecdotal data that like maybe impacts why the grass should grow and shouldn't grow. This is a Grand Prairie state, you know, that the Native Americans said Illinois means onion patch. Oh no, maybe that's Chicago. I'm not sure. People are like, get this freaking guy out of here.
Who is
and I'm
this
getting
guy?
beat up and you guys have to show up to help me out of the situation.
Oh God. Anyway, well, thank you everybody for listening. And seriously, if anybody has contacts with the Peacekeeper, an office or something that we can get a hold of, or have them reach out to us at 3copstalk@gmail.com, the number 3copstalk@gmail.com, please have them reach out because we really think that this has some potential to be good for everybody. But we just want to get some answers on what their policies, procedures, what their vision is. And also, please tell your friends and family to go to where they get their podcasts, download, subscribe, leave a rating and review. We'd really appreciate it because we really want to make the world a better place. Everybody have a great day.
I can tell when Chris is really impassioned about something, Scott, because he's like banging that black sandal of his on the table. When he's making a point, you hear that boom, boom. Like, he's like Khrushchev at the UN.
Yeah, right.
Ever wanted to ask a police officer a question? Mail your questions to 3copstalk@gmail.com. That's the number 3, copstalk@gmail.com, and we'll answer them on the show. Follow us on Instagram at 3copstalk. That's the number 3 copstalk. Thanks for listening, and stay safe out there.